start streaming for you. Okay, and you're live now.
Okay.
The audio is good.
All right.
You're also right before lunch, so you have, if you need a little bit extra time, feel free.
Sure. All right, everyone. I think we're getting started. If you guys are here about the free trip to Maui, that's in lecture hall B. Sorry, that's not this hall. All right, but yeah, so we're going to cover leveling the playing field, high quality customizable scouting for everyone. So we've got a lot. I'm going to cover a lot here. My notes have we because I did this presentation with my co-mentor at Worlds in April, slightly modified for this. So, but when I say we, think of me and the other mentors and the students. You know, Gray is one of our students, for example, who work on the system. Okay. All right, so what to expect from this? We're going to talk about Scout radios. If you haven't heard of Scout radios, you're going to hear a lot about it in a few minutes. What's good about, how it helps the drive team, how it helps the scouters, how it helps the scouting leads. There's a lot of presentations out there that people see about how teams like, for example, 1796 was just talking about this morning, their electronic scouting system, it does all these cool things and such. And, a lot of large teams that have the skill sets and the passion can build these, big systems with all these, automations and analytics. But if you're a small team or you don't have people with the same kind of skills or passion, how do you bridge that gap? And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring those kinds of homegrown capabilities that the larger teams have to teams that are, to the mid-sized and smaller teams. So they have this access to the same kind of capabilities. Basically, Scout Radios is scouting as a service. So what is Scout Radios? So first I'll talk about, a little introduction from me. Mike O'Connell. I'm one of the scouting mentors for Team 102, the Gearheads in New Jersey. I've been scouting the Gearheads, I guess, since 2018. Prior to that, I mentored Lego Robotics, so it wasn't FLL. It was more like a mini FRC that somebody at another team had designed to kind of help train students to be ready for FRC. Work for a Fortune 100 company doing IT automation and data science. The guy who isn't here, who I did the presentation with, but I have to give him a shout out, is Jordan Lees. He's my co-mentor. He's a Team 102 alumni, and previously to graduating, he had worked on the older scouting system that the team had, and a lot of the lessons learned from that are what went into this system. He started mentoring the Gearheads right after graduating high school, did web development as a hobby, got paid for it, the things he learned doing this, and now he's on the West Coast doing data science for an electronics firm. Plus, of course, all the other students and developers. So real in brief, so Scout Radios. First off, it's free. Everybody asks, hey, what does this cost? Does it cost any money? It's free to use. There's no dedicated hardware to buy. You don't have to set up anything. It's easy to use. There's zero coding or maybe low coding, when you get into the customization. It's all automated in terms of like the Blue Alliance feeding data to us, through what we call the fire hose and such. The key part is that it's fully customizable. And this is really where the power of Scout Radio shines. I mean, they talked to them this morning, like some of the teams are saying, hey, when you're scouting, like one team likes to do a thing, the other team disagrees and such. There's a lot of apps out there that say, hey, listen, here's the scouting app, like Love@, or whatnot. If that's fine for you, great. Just use whatever they design every year. But most teams really want to customize and fine-tune what they're collecting, the data they're collecting, and how they do analytics on it. So that's what Scout Radios does, is even though every team gets their own instance, you get to design your own forms, your own analytics, you get to design what shows up on the screen. And ultimately, because we've been iterating on this over several years, there's a lot of power behind it. We have a lot of really good analytics. Last year we had a student do a lot of data science around the match predictions, fine-tuning our match prediction algorithms and such. Just a little bit of history. So originally, we wrote it in 2018 as just a single, full-stack JavaScript app. Ran on a server with 2 CPUs and a gig of RAM, and it would fall over every time more than 12 people tried to use the application. So at some point, someone suggested we put it on Amazon Web Services. So right before COVID, we had it ready on Amazon Web Services. But once we put it on Amazon, it was so fast and so cheap, and there was just so much power we weren't using. We're like, hey, if we tweak the database schema a bit, we could open this up, let other teams use it. So that's what we did. Started in 2022, we made it so other teams could sign up and use it. We had 3 partners in the 2022 season. Brave souls working with us through the bugs and such, but really took off in 2023. So here's some of the feedback we had from our early access partners. We're now officially out of early access. So as of the 2024 season, Scout Radios is out of beta, so to speak. But here's some of the feedback we got from teams. So, I definitely appreciate, these folks being there early on, giving us constructive feedback, constructive criticism and whatnot. They've definitely helped contribute to the system. So as of the end of 2024, we have 240 teams onboarded across 40 US states, 10 countries, 11 time zones. Key part of all this, that we did early on, another student last year, we talked about making it multilingual. Because FIRST runs, competitions in Turkey and China and Brazil and such. They print all their materials in different languages. So we thought, hey, it'd be great to make it accessible to other languages and such. So the student went off and said, hey, I looked at all these language modules, didn't find one I liked, so I wrote my own. And we're like, okay, great. That's awesome. And it turned out pretty cool. I'll do a quick demo. If I can find the application here. So when you go to the Scout, so Scout Radios, by the way, is a web app. So that's why you don't have to buy any hardware. You just run it on your phone. And so, it's set up. You go into the menu bar here, and you say you want to pick Brazilian Portuguese. It changes all the non-FIRST. This is out of FIRST here. I don't need to translate it. But it's all in Portuguese. If we change it to, say, Chinese. What's really cool is he did it, for right to left languages like Hebrew, because we've got, I think, 3 teams currently using it in Israel. So the app flips. Now everything's right to left. Even like the layout of the application flips. So the menus come from the other side and such. Luckily, all the icons are the same. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to navigate the app. But we'll go back to English. So that's one of the ways we try and make the app more accessible. And all these translations are community-based, community-oriented. So we use Weblate. That's kind of this, what we see down here. Whoops. Weblate is a site that people can go to and help do translations for applications. So we're plugged into that. I think beyond the first language, I think we have Norwegian out there too. Someone was like, hey, can we do it in Norwegian? And we're like, sure, go ahead and do Norwegian. Okay, so real quick recap. I don't know who saw the scouting discussion this morning, but just kind of rediscuss, why do we scout in FRC? Strategy, tips, the scales in your favor. If it matches like on, getting close to, equal capabilities of 2 teams or whatnot, data and strategy will always tip the scales. So if teams can scout, you really want to be scouting. And I'm talking about both pit scouting and match scouting. So if anybody not familiar with pit versus match scouting? Okay, so pit scouting, just for the folks who raised their hand there, is when, like during practice matches and such, you're walking around and you're asking teams a bunch of qualitative questions about the robot. How many drive motors do you have? Are you tank versus swerve? Can you climb? That kind of thing. A lot of the sort of analytical capabilities will show up during match scouting, but that's where you want to kind of capture some things. Plus, it's an excuse for your team members, your scouts, to just go around and talk to people, and kind of like it's like your team introducing yourself to these other teams. Match scouting is when we go out and we collect quantitative data per robot per match, and we see what are they capable of, or what are they they may say, hey, we can score 10 notes in a match, but maybe they only really score 5 or 6. Or they say, hey, we can score the amp, but you find out that the amp takes them half the match to score a single amp note. Or you realize that, hey, this team didn't really say much about themselves, but man, are they really good at they can climb in 5 seconds. They just zip over, grab on, and shoot themselves up. So that kind of analytical, quantitative data is really helpful understanding what teams can, actually can and can't do. So again, for large teams where they've got the people and the passion and the skills to build their own application, absolutely, that's awesome. Go ahead and do that. But for all the other teams that want to do more, let's talk about what Scout Radios can help all these other teams. All right, so what does it offer for the drive team and the strategy team? So there's a lot of analytics. We're talking about some of the data possibilities. So this is, the MAR, Mid-Atlantic Region Championships data. So this is the all-team metrics. I think in the previous scouting thing, one of the teams had a similar spreadsheet. Actually, we'll look at the actual all-team metrics page over here. So, So what you're looking at, basically it's a heat map. So the brighter the color, the better a team is compared to other teams. So you can kind of start getting at a glance how teams do, compared to each other. And then all these columns are sortable. So you can sort by rank. You can see, which teams have a high ranking point, but maybe didn't have the strongest, say total notes or whatnot. But they had, they're good at gaining the ranking points. You can sort, total notes is a pretty good indicator of overall success. So you can sort by total notes. It's also important to mention that we call this averages, but really we're going to rename it for 2025 to trending, because it uses what's called an exponential moving average. So that basically weights newer data more than older data. So if a team's getting hot, this will pick up that team's getting hot. Particularly 74-14, you had some reliability issues earlier in the competition, but was getting good at the end. Had we been in the picking position, we probably would have picked them. But nobody did in the end, which is, I think a miss on the part of the other picking teams. And we can see the maximums and such. What did people do as their absolute peak of something? Okay. Let's get back to. So the secret sauce of Scout Radios is that everybody can customize their own forms. So like this is an example of the scouting form over here. Teleop. This is from a previous year. I think I grabbed this screenshot from a previous presentation. But you can see things like multi-selects and counters and such. You define that in JSON, which is basically JavaScript object language. You define, hey, I want this field, this kind of field, this kind of field, and then the app automatically builds the forms for you, and it builds all the tables and the data for you. So for that customization, you can define exactly what data you want to collect. You can either do low code, like use the JSON, either start from scratch, or a lot of other teams in Scout Radios share, once they design a form for that year, they'll share their form. 102 does that. So you can either build it from scratch, take somebody else's and customize it, or just use somebody else's form. A lot of teams use Scout Radios and don't actually customize it. But we had over 100 different unique sets of forms in the app last year. So most teams are leveraging that capability. That's really how Scout Radios offers more to teams than just one of those out-of-the-box apps. You design both the pit and the match scouting forms, and then further you can you customize what you want to see on the screens, like that view. If we go back to the so there's more metrics that 102 used in their overall data set, but these are the columns that they wanted to see in all the charts. And some of these, by the way, are derived. For example, the scouts don't count, hey, how many notes did each robot collect? The scouts counted, hey, how many did they score in the amp and auto? How many did they score in the speaker and auto? How many unamplified speaker shots and teleop, amplified speaker shots, etc. And then you've got a derived metric you define that says, hey, add up all those and call that total notes. So there's a lot of math you can do to get these kinds of interesting other metrics, like speed factors. Like cycle speed factor is a key one. Where's my mouse? Generally, the app is written around, a higher number is better. So if somebody's doing something really fast, you want to represent that as a higher number. So, in this, to get a little into the weeds, they got into like logarithms and such and powers and such to make this that every 2 notches of speed factor was, half the time. So somebody was twice as fast if they were 2 notches higher than somebody else. Okay, so how does this help the drive team? So that wall of numbers, is great, but it's really hard to kind of see what's going on. The drive team dashboard is a view of, hey, here's the upcoming match. Anybody here from 1640? No? Okay. Yeah, exactly. Oh my lordy, thank you. If you ever see 1640, oh my lordy, that's like a thing they do. Yeah, so we use 1640 as our example here. So the next match for 1640 shows which alliance they're on, who's on the other alliance. We call these the spider charts. I've also seen them called strength graphs. This basically gives a visual representation of the relative strengths of the two alliances. I can show an actual, let's see, where's the app? Here we go. So if I come back, and we'll do it in like phone mode to kind of show, hey, how this looks. And the app, let's see, Drive Team Dashboard. So on the phone, everything rearranges itself. The whole app is responsive. So it fits itself onto a phone screen, onto a laptop. Maybe your strategist going to the field for picking, they may have a tablet or they may have a phone, so it'll work either way. But besides, the spider charts, you have a little mini heat map that again shows the two alliances, the comparisons of their capabilities. And then there should be some, well, okay, actually I have a separate thing. So this is really useful. It also has a little prediction. For example, in this match, not 102, let's pick 1640. Okay. So the app predicted that red would get 95. Yep. Pardon? Good question. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Spoiler, this will work without Wi-Fi. So the app predicted red 95, blue 58. I think the actual score was red 102, blue 58. So it did pretty good in this match. And if you want to drill in, they talked in the previous issues about, let me get that app out of the way here. When you want to look at a particular team, like you're making pick lists, you want to look at different capabilities. This is looking at the per team view for 1640. The app captures photos of the robots when you're out pit scouting. It showed, here we summarize the pit scouting answers, the statistics for 1640. They're, what do they average, what do they max, min, variance, all the notes that the scouters have taken, summarized, and then all the matches they played. So you can get a really deep view. Again, if you don't want to just rely on the data like they were talking, they said in the earlier scouting sessions, don't just sit there and look at the data, also understand the qualitative aspects in the field. So you can capture all that here. And then alliance selection. The app has a whole section that lets you basically game out alliance selection, then follow along as it's going. And if you're on the field as one of the captains, or you got maybe your first pick and you're helping advise, it'll show the data as it goes. And we'll do a demo of that. And I'll shrink this down just a smidge for the screen. Okay. This is going to be really hard, but it's over here. So you can set a pick list in the application. So your team admins, your strategists or whatnot can set up, hey, here's our pick list, and there's a way to capture that in the set. And then you can sort that all teams metrics by your pick list. Now, 1676 is grayed out because they're making the first pick. So they happen to pick 341. So you pick 341. And if they accept, you click the box. And now 341 is grayed out, and 1640 is on the clock. And you can go through the line selection the same way. So say they picked 5895. Now 2590 picked 1807, so they were captain. So when you pick them and they accept, everybody else moves up. So the app basically handles the alliance selection. Meanwhile, you can see, let's say you guys are 316, you can see who's still available. Like I was saying before, by the pick list that was set up here, 7414 would have been the next available pick. But if you follow through all the picks, they never did get picked. So when you're at champs or whatnot, you can change the number of rounds to 4. It turns out that in the Pacific Northwest, they have some regionals where there aren't enough teams to make 8 alliances. So we had to request, hey, can we do it with 7 alliances? Well, yeah, sure. So we changed this up to have any number of alliances as well as multiple numbers of rounds. Okay, so what does it offer for the scouters? Where's my mouse? Okay, so the bad old days. This is when Jordan was still a coder for the team and he was still a student. They would rewrite the app every year. You know, because it was, I think, Java, JSP, and they had to create a new schema and all that. It was clunky, hard to use. You know, everybody hated doing this. So really only 2 students scouted the entire competition, one student per alliance. When I was a parent at that time, I'd watch all the other students being bored. I mean, a lot of that was kind of what spurred us to initially create the app that became Scout Radios. So I wanted to solve, how do we get people involved? How do we get them engaged? The solution is basically make scouting fun. So one, you know, somebody had the idea, hey, can you make something that could be reused year to year? So, you know, I think when my middle child was on the team, you know, we asked him, listen, could you know, if we gave you some description of data, could you make a web page out of it that when somebody hits the button, it sends that data to the server? And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll try it out. And came back a few hours later, and that was the acorn of Scout Radios. And actually, if we have time, I'll do a little demo that kind of recreates that. We have a training process that we go through that with, that we're taking our team through now, and that we're going to be taking the community through as well. But basically, you know, so code reuse means fewer bugs. There's a lot, you know, very little friction. The scouters get automatically assigned in a rotation. They get to use their own phones. You know, it does work offline with QR codes, but I'll talk about that in a bit. You know, the main mothership is a web app. And then in terms of personal responsibility, the scouts know when they're going to scout. They also know that we have audit reports that can track how well they're doing. And we don't use those really to punish people. We use those more to say, hey, listen, if somebody's having trouble, you know, let's sit down with them, figure out why are they having a problem, and help them get up to speed. So scouts all get a scouting dashboard, so they can see, hey, which teams have they been assigned in pit scouting. We usually send people out, they talked about social anxiety. Like, you know, again, my middle son had terrible social anxiety, still does to this day, and he's 23. Getting him to go pit scouting was always a chore. I mean, you'd see like his friends and like another mentor kind of around him. I stay out of it, just trying to talk him into going out to the first team. Once he started talking, he was fine. But we generally pair people up in teams of 2, maybe 3. And they talked about, you know, we like to pair an experienced person with an inexperienced person. And that way each person has a set of teams they're going to talk to, but then they go with their partner to the other teams. It's just kind of it's a way to kind of overcome some of that social anxiety. And then they know which matches are coming up. So this is basically at the start of day 2 at the MAR championships, or maybe day 3. You know, so this scout has these matches coming up. So an example, the pit scouting form, you know, we talked about going with your partner, and it's just, you know, all the questions are there on their phone. You just kind of go through them, ask, you fill out the things, sliders and text boxes and such, and counters. We do ask the scouts to take at least 1 good photo, although one of them mentioned take 2 good photos from different angles. I think that's a good idea. So maybe we can add that in, because, you know, the form you can take up to 4 pictures, the main picture and then 3 supplementary pictures. Match scouting is pretty similar. You know, you see, this comes up, you'll have a picture of the robot at the top of the page, you know, what alliance it's on. And then you kind of go through the auto stuff. There's auto scroll buttons, which are being cut off. Hold on a second. How do I get that to come up? Oh, well, you can't see them, but there's auto scroll buttons down here, so you don't have to just scroll the page. You hit the button, it automatically scrolls to the next section. And then you'll go through auto, through teleop, there's endgame notes. We ask the scouters to write some stuff down. So how does the scouting lead? What's good for the scouting lead here? What offers from Scout Radios? So there's a lot of management opportunities, you know, in terms of what the scouting lead can do with the system. I'm going to touch on a few of them. You know, big one is, this is the scouting lead's view of the match scouting assignment. So the scouting lead can see, hey, you know, the current match, who's assigned, who submitted their match already, who hasn't, so that, you know, Johan can say, hey, you know, Bob, you haven't hit, you know, or Gray, you know, and Gray's over there writing like War and Peace about some team or something. You know, also in case accidentally somebody hit submit early. You know, so the app, you can always overwrite a submission. You know, if somebody put in bad data, you can rescout that later on. And we'll talk about some of that with the audit reports. So as, you know, again, we subscribe to the Blue Alliance Firehose. We get every single match result sent to us around the world 24/7 from the Blue Alliance. So the Scout Radios database has all that, and as matches come in, these pages update automatically. in terms of TBA having issues, or really FRC events, if you remember earlier in the year. Whoop, is that a question? Sure.
In this website, is there any way, like, based on the statistics that you get from Blue Alliance, can you, like, create a way to see who's, like, favored to win at any competition or matches?
Well, sure. So let me jump back on that. When we look, so the Drive Team dashboard before each match might be hard to see, but it's giving you a percentage chance of which alliance is going to win. So now I should mention that's based on an attribute called contributed points, where there's a bunch of math that we encourage teams to do to basically say, hey, here's what you're collecting. Use something to add up what do you think each team is contributing to that alliance's score, so that you take the actual alliance score, subtract out foul points, and the scouting data should match that score. And if it's off, it means one of the scouts was a little off somehow. Now, you don't know which of the 3 scouts it is in any single match, but statistically, you can figure out over the course of a competition which scouts, maybe have somebody just phoning it in, hopefully not. But if some scout's just making up data, you can say, hey, stop doing that, Or if somebody, like I said, usually when we see it, somebody's just having some trouble keeping up with the speed of the game or whatnot, and we just buddy them up and we can help fix that problem. But that's where that shows up, is in these, in this dashboard is also just a list of all the upcoming matches, and it'll do a prediction for every match. You too. So I mentioned auditing. Let's see. Oh, I did want to mention this. So 2024 was really bad that FRC events wasn't sending data up to the Blue Alliance, and so a lot of scouting apps were like dead in the water because they weren't getting data feeds in the Blue Alliance. We had a way to input data manually for off-season events, because a lot of folks had asked us, hey, can you set up a way to put data in even if they're not syncing? Like you go to some off-season and they're not syncing up to FRC events. So we use this, and other teams use this when FRC events was having issues. But again, it's good for off-season, it's good for when data's not flowing. You can manually put in the team lists, the schedule, the results, and such. So for the scouting leads in here, everybody knows that you give your scouts assignments and they just do their job great, right? So this is one of the audit pages. This shows for each of the scouts, hey, have they been doing their assignments? Or if they didn't, did they get somebody to cover for them? The N is, hey, that was a missed match. So in 102, getting back to culture, we've had pretty good luck that our scouts are really good at doing their job. We really emphasize everybody has a job. If you're at a competition and you're not pit or drive, you are scouting. Everybody's in the scouting rotation. We're not a big team, so occasionally we'll pull in an alumni or a parent just to fill in the scouting rotation, because we like to have a minimum of 12 people scouting. So you have 6 on for a couple of matches, then they get a bunch of matches off. And then the other 6 rotate in. So if we have less than 12, we may bring in a parent, but we also recruit some, during pit scouting, we often recruit other teams. Because by now other teams know that, hey, listen, we want to help scout with 102. Can we volunteer with you guys? And so they'll also scout with us in the same application. So this helps you see who's doing it. We talk about, in terms of rewards, we've done a couple of scouting competitions. There's a local retro arcade in our town. And so we say, hey, listen, the top 3 scouters who had both the highest completion rate of their assignments and were in the top half of the rankings by accuracy get the retro arcade certificates. And it turned out that, I think the last time we did this, I had 4 scouts tied for 100% coverage, and they were all in the top half of the accuracy. So I gave out 4 certificates because there was no way I didn't have a tiebreaker. So this is the accuracy. So the audit shows us, hey, are they being done? That was the last page. Are they being done professionally? So we give the scouting lead a way to see all the photos they've taken in one go, to see all the comments they've written in one go. Because we did have one student who thought it was funny to write some comments at one competition. Well, okay, listen, you can't do that. But that kind of thing, you guys are all students, and sometimes you think things are funny that may not be funny. Hopefully not you guys. But you can catch that. And then are they being done well? So you've heard of OPR. Who hasn't heard of OPR? So OPR was, I think, Karthik, and I can't pronounce his last name, but if you look up Karthik presentation, you'll see his stuff on that he does about strategy and such. He's really good. I think he came up with originally something called OPR, Offensive Power Rating. The theory is, hey, imagine at a competition, every robot in a match is secretly adding just some number of points to the match, so that the alliance score would add up, like A plus B plus C equals that score. The next match, D plus E plus F equals that score. And again, any given match, you don't know what A did versus B, but over the course of 30 or 60 matches, you can use a lot of linear algebra and start solving for that. And so OPR, and that, for example, the Blue Alliance has OPR statistics during competitions, is a way of doing a linear algebra to kind of approximate the strength of a robot. So this is similar, but Scouter performance rating is the approximate error that each scout is introducing. So lower is better. And because it's linear algebra, you get some weird results, like some people have negative error. Not exactly realistic, but that tends to happen when you have not a lot of matches under your belt or something, or the algorithm wants to stuff a lot of error someplace. Basically, I tell people, if you're in the top half of this chart, you're in good shape. But this is how we can tell if scouts are being accurate. So other teams may have people who actually, humans, read every single scouting result and try and just eyeball, hey, is this accurate or not? But we're doing it mathematically. We're comparing the scouts results against the FRC API. So to your question, what about comps with no signal? So before 2023, that was our biggest Achilles heel. We didn't have an offline system. And we went out to Springside Chestnut Hill. Anybody competed at Springside Chestnut Hill outside of Philadelphia? It's basically a zero signal zone. It's not even like, around the building, you can go outside and get signal. There's no signal. We weren't ready with an offline capability, so we brought paper and pencil. And for the teams that use paper and pencil, that's great, but that was really rough on us. So one of the students said, hey, listen, I got this web app that I do for like the 4-H fair. I could do a thing, so that became what we call Scout Radio's Voyager. So we use Svelte. It's a module that you can run that works with the main Scout Radio's mothership. And it's a progressive web app. Once you load it, it runs on your phone. It uses a local database. All the code is running locally, so you don't need a web connection. At that point, it uses QR codes. So the scouting lead creates the schedule, shows a QR code to the scouts. They get their schedule. They scout things. They generate QR codes from their matches. They show them back to the scouting lead. Now the scouting lead in the current system still has to walk outside to get signal or wherever there's Wi-Fi to upload to the mothership. We don't have the full application in Voyager. That's future expansion. At that point, we do want to do other things like, use OCR. That's another future feature. Hey, do we use optical character recognition? You can take a photo of the schedule and automatically upload the schedule into your phone, that kind of thing. So that does talk about, hey, how do we do it? So this is sort of the technology that's behind the scenes. And I bring this up in part because, we're trying to get more community development involved. There's people in the Scout Radio's community, and we have a Discord, and lots of folks want to see all kinds of features. And we're like, hey, that's great. Are you interested in contributing? So if any of these things look interesting, you don't have to, you don't have to know all of this. Nobody involved with this application knows every one of these bullets. I know a bunch of them. Jordan knows a bunch of them. The students who built some of these, progressive web apps and such know these, but no single person knows the whole thing. So you can pick a tiny corner, like for example, HTML and CSS. When you look at Scout Radios, you may think, hey, these menus are organized weird. This app doesn't really have a great feel because we haven't had a real web designer hit it yet. If web design's your passion, you want to say, hey, listen, I can make Scout Radios look better and better organized. That would be awesome. Do you want to touch on the match predictions? Because you get a lot of questions about how the match predictions work. And we did have a point where one competition, there was a match that showed up in the reports as 100% chance that one of the alliances would win. And students actually came and found me in the stands and said, listen, that's kind of disheartening. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Shouldn't do that. Should never be a 100% chance. Turned out that the chance was basically 99.998 and it rounded up. But we went in actually live at the competition and set it so it capped at 99%. There's always a chance. But basically, you take the two teams, like say the Blue Alliance you take their predicted points and their standard deviation in the red alliance. And the question is, what are the odds that a random dot inside that red bell curve is going to be higher than a dot in the blue bell curve? And this is sort of a little mini AP statistics thing. But you can use this equation here, taking the two averages and the standard deviations, and you get what's called a z-score. And if you look that up in the normal distribution, so a z-score of 0 would be 50-50, blue or red wins. And then as z goes higher or lower towards 4 or a higher number or lower, then it becomes more percentage towards one side or the other. So that's basically what the system is doing. It calculates the z-score per match and looks it up in the table and comes up with a prediction. Now the catch is that we've been using contributed points for this. Previous years, that was a really good predictor of matches. This year, because of things, it's more nonlinear. You've got AMP powering the speaker bots, right? So if you have an alliance full of speaker bots, but no AMP bot, they're not going to score as high. So we want to be able to have the system use a different thing, but that's going to be some sort of feature and such. So that gets us into, basically the adventure continues. We've got a whole wish list of features to add in here. So here's a few of them. This year, hoping to work with the new students in 102 and any of the folks in the community, a big ask for the app is, hey, how do we trace autopaths? So we had a couple teams say, oh, we love Scout radios, but we're going to use Love App because we can trace autopaths. So we're going to fill that in this year if we can. But sharing data between organizations, a UI editor, etc. All these features that would be great to have. So how are we going to do this? Again, high quality scouting by everyone. We want to make this bring in more community support. And again, if you're coming in and you're like, oh, I'd love to do this, but I don't know anything about HTML and JavaScript. I don't know if you heard Gray earlier, but she's taking classes, Code Academy classes right now to learn HTML, CSS. We've got all kinds of resources. A fair amount of the app was written by just 2 people, and if it continues to be that way, it'll keep going. It's still very useful, but we're not going to hit all those cool features until, I don't know why we picked 2091. I think that's the 100th anniversary or first. Somebody thought that was a funny date. But we are getting more community contributors. So for example, I don't know, is anybody here from 246? There's somebody on our Discord named PyGrammer246. Whoever that is, they've done some cool stuff. They've added some things to the application. We've had other contributors before then. It's all open source. We've got, we have a way that you can set up web pages on how to set up a development environment. Again, we have whole slide decks on the Scout on the technologies used in Scout radios. We have links to all kinds of Code Academy classes. JavaScript, TypeScript, HTML, CSS, Mongo. We use a NoSQL database in the back end. Starter features and such. So I'm going to hold there. I'm going to stop here for questions. And then, depending on time, if anybody's interested, I can show that Acorn project. But first, a couple of questions. Any questions? Or did I just glaze everybody's eyes over? Did I mention it's free? So if you go to that Learn More, by the way, on that Learn More page are links to the form to get signed up. If you want your team to try it out, again, there's no cost. There's a link to our Discord if you want to jump on the Discord. There's a link to the wiki, and I have the link to the wiki here. Okay.
Are there any questions inside the app that us, people scouting, could use as like a reference to ask other teams?
So in terms of, let's see. So the app is customizable. Like when you're going on pit scouting, you could just come up with your own pit scouting form. But again, a lot of teams just take, hey, here's this other team came up with something first. Like 102 or 2252 or whatnot. We have a lot of teams in Michigan, like, I don't know, 50 teams out of Michigan. And then you can take that and say, oh, that's really good, but I want to tweak it. So a lot of teams take those forms and just tweak it to customize to what they want to do. But yeah, so the pit scouting form is all the questions that the students are going to ask when they walk around the pits, but during practice matches and such. And then you might have a couple of questions on the match scouting form, like, hey, describe were they good at defense or not. Anything where you want sort of some qualitative notes. And those are sort of some of the text strings that we can collect in other reports. Like if I go back to the view of the here. So like these notes, this is a collection for 1640. Oh my lordy. For 1640 at the champs, both the scouters notes and the super scouts notes. So we, there's, I didn't talk about, but there's a way to do super scouting. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. That was another feature people asked us to add in. Any other questions?
So our team here uses like Google Drive to export all of our data and everything we have. So is there any way in Scout Radios that we can like export the data in like a Google Sheets?
Yep. Great question. So let me jump over to the application. So if you go into, where's my mouse? There it is. So if you go under Info and Reports, might be hard to see in this screen, but you can say, so for example, metrics for all teams. We're going to leave. That's a jump. Sorry, that's the report here. Hold on a second. Info Reports. Export data. There we go. And so we have all these CSV exports. You can export, the match data for just this competition for the entire year, et cetera. So a bunch of different ways of getting the data out into CSV. And once it's in CSV, you can bring to Google Sheets, you can bring to Tableau, you can do whatever you want with it. Any other questions? Did anybody want to see that Acorn project? Or are you all just ready to run out to lunch? Right, I'll pull it up if anybody wants to escape. Oh, wait, what's that? Pardon? Okay, cool. All right. Okay. You guys use VS Code? Anyone use VS Code? Yeah, I like VS Code. I was a big Eclipse person, but then VS Code's won me over. So this is so we've got this. Let's see. Scout Radio's tutorial Acorn. So if you go out to the First Team 102 GitHub site, you can find Scout Radio's tutorial Acorn. There's a couple of branches off of that go into different levels of development. But this is sort of replicating what that first form did. So this text, this code here, is essentially a description of a form, right? We've taken out all the derived metrics. But you've got headers, checkboxes, counters, etc. And so when somebody hits the home page of this little application, the router sets this data and it sends it to this index file. It says render this. And you're passing a couple of variables, the title and the layout. So that index file, we use something called Pug. Anybody hear of Pug? It's probably sort of a corner case. Pug is a JavaScript templating language that basically you don't have to write HTML by hand. You can write stuff that looks a bit like HTML, but you can put in loops and conditionals and things. And so it'll generate a web page dynamically. So when we look at, say, that big page of data, it's doing things in all kinds of loops to build out all those cells and put the colors in and such. So I've got a bunch of things commented out. So right now it just says, hey, show me a title, make a header, and show me that, that layout block of JSON. And what that looks like when you first run it, looks like this. So if I hit refresh, it's just this, there's a header and this big blob of JSON. But if I come back to this code and we say, hey, listen, let's start looping through this, right? So let's loop through every different piece of JSON code in that overall layout. So each little block, and we'll just start off just dumping out the have it spit out. Oop, did that uncomment? Why did that uncomment? Fatal flaw. What am I missing? That might work. Let's find out. Is it going to blow up? It blew up. Expected. So here's debugging. All right, we're going to do a little live debugging session while I figure out what happened to my my code here. So case. Let me just uncomment everything and see what happens. And comment. There we go. Aha. Exciting. Okay. So now, again, if I look at this index, so in JavaScript, this is an array. That's what these square brackets are. And then each of these things, each line is a different object. So in JavaScript, objects are just a collection of key value pairs. So they all have a type, they all have a label, some of them have IDs. So coming back to this code, when I, mouse. So I'm looping through each of those things. I would say, hey, I want to check the type, but right now I'm just saying, hey, just show me the, just show me the JSON. So if we refresh this page, Alt Tab, oh, there we go. All right, so now we have a whole bunch of JSON objects. So we're going a little further. I want to see headers. So let's uncomment these things. So now we're saying, hey, when the type is H1 or H2, output an HTML H2 element or an H3 element. So if I refresh this now, oh look, now we're starting to have some headers. If I click on this and I say inspect, we see that right here. It might be a little hard to see, but that's H2 autonomous H2. And so we can keep going. We can say, hey, listen, I want to see some spacers, some checkboxes. Alt Tab. All right, X tab, by the way, doesn't work. I have to hit the Alt key. So now I hit refresh. Now I got some checkboxes. And how do I embiggen this, make it a little more visible? So now we start having some checkboxes. And that's basically, from there, the application, we start building in the counters. There's a little JavaScript there. So when you have a counter element, you make two buttons. And if you hit one, it increments the number. You hit the other, it decrements the number. Some counters stop at 0, so you can't go below 0. But we have a bad counter button, which lets you go below 0. That was for last year's game. Basically, if somebody descores a game piece, a cube or a cone, but they didn't score any, we wanted to mark them that they actually went negative because they hurt their team, unfortunately. You need some CSS to make it look pretty, that kind of thing. But that's basically, from there, from that little nugget, a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of HTML, that's how the whole application works. It may look imposing at first, but it's really, you just break it down into bite-sized chunks. So again, if you're interested, on our wiki, all kinds of ways to contribute. And if you're not interested, if you're just like, hey, listen, I just want to use the platform because it looks pretty cool, sign up. We'll get you guys into the application. You can try it out. Definitely practice scout a historical match. We have some information on how you can do that, how you can set up, hey, I want to practice scout last year's regional just to get a feel for it, or practice scout week 0. Take it from there. Other questions? Any other questions? Okay. I'll let you guys go. Get some lunch. Thanks, everyone. Okay. All right. Woohoo. I need some food. How you doing?
You said it was customizable.
Yep.
How would I customize it?
So here, come over here. We'll look at, let me drag this screen back into the screen so it's easier to see. Is this big enough? Make sure, okay. There we go. All right, so if let's say you're the scouting lead or somebody on the team. So there's this whole manage screen.
Oh, so it's like a PC kind of thing.
Pardon? Well, it'll work on, it's a web app. So you can use it from your phone.
That's why I just don't see it.
Well, you're not, so basically you have to log into every team gets their own application, right? I mean, you don't have to install anything, but like if you say, hey, log in to view data, you can scroll through this. Well, okay, so go to log in to view data, And so all these teams are using the app. So you can pick any one of these teams to see their data and what they're doing.
Oh, so I would have to register our team. for
Right.
this,
So
okay.
it's free and easy. You can go here and there's sign up for your team to use Scout Radios. You'll just fill in this form, and then sometime later today, we'll get you set up and we'll send you back, hey, here's your password, and a whole lot of wiki links and such, and videos and things that you can look at. What team you're from?
I keep on forgetting our team number. We're the VB Stingers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll see you guys when you set it up.
In high school.
Sure. Awesome.
Quick question about the app. Is there like a guide through on how to use the app?
Oh, yeah. So when you go out to the wiki, so you basically, if let me new incognito window. So if you go to, like, say, Scout Radios, so you're going to see this, right? So if you go to this interest in learning, there's links. Here's the form. There's the wiki. We also have it up here. Need help? Check our wiki. And then on the wiki, there's resources like how to scout, how to manage your scouting operation, how to do analytics, how to manage your org. You have presentations and training videos, overview of all the customization, etc. How to do development. So that's all in the wiki. And then the email that I send to teams when they onboard, I also include a couple of videos, which are probably linked in here someplace. Because different folks have done videos about the application, either interviewing us or asking questions or whatnot. So, what team are you guys from?
We're 6636. We're the Full Metal Beavers
Cool, awesome.
in Jamaica.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
So,
All right, awesome. Well, good luck next season.
Thank you.
If we see you guys set up, I'll get you guys set up.
Well, we're gonna be in the New York regionals, so.
That doesn't matter. You can use this anywhere. I mean, people use this around the
No,
globe.
like if we see you.
Oh no, we're FMA, so we're not going to be at the New York
I see,
regional.
I see.
I meant if I see you sign up for the app, I'll get you guys set up.
All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Have a good one.
Sure.
How'd the talk go?
Pretty good.
What's new?
Hmm?
What's new with Scout Radios?
I mean, the big one is we're going to try and do include images in the forms and let you do auto route tracing. Because that's that was the big thing that Love That was peeling off a couple people for.
Gotcha.
So, but I did a pitch at the end about, hey, listen, here's how you contribute and such, because all of my really experienced coders have moved on, and all my new people are starting at the ground zero. So now's a great time for other folks in the community to also jump in. We'll all learn together.
That would be really cool if it was like sort of a more true open source project.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of like open source FRC things that it's a team who owns it, and occasionally someone will submit a bug fix or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean,
real community engagement.
yeah, it's a really big application. If you look at like that slide about all of our technology, where's the presenter view? So you can see it up there. So I have the two screens going. There's a lot going on. And I was telling the folks in the room, nobody knows every one of those bullets.
Yeah,
different people.
Like enterprise level.
At this point, it is,
complexity.
yeah. And so, yeah, I'm trying to make it as, non-impenetrable as possible, so that people can approach it. I did a little demo actually of coding, so we've got what we call our Acorn project. So, what happened to my thing here? There it is. Okay. Where basically, like when way back when my son Callahan was first challenged, hey, if I give you a bunch of JSON, could you make a web page? Now when you hit submit, it pops it out. He basically built this. I mean, we had some sample JSON that described a form, headers and counters and all that jazz. And then this pug, it's a templated language in JavaScript, generates HTML on the fly based on the thing. And then there's a form that when you hit post, it submits and all that.
So
But-
it's all parameterized on the config.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that table of that schema definition drives the forms, it drives all the reports. Then there's separate places you can customize, because I mean, at some point you probably create like 50 different metrics, different kinds of, derived metrics and such. You only want to see maybe 12 on the screen, so you can show what columns you want to see. So, yeah, we really try and make it, the folks at RLD, Real Life Data, refer to the, Scout Radios as the kitbot of scouting. Because it's like this bridging process to enable people, to kind of get up to the next level. We've got a couple teams where the students say, hey, listen, we used Scout Radios 2 years or so, and now we're writing our own. I'm like, awesome, go for it. But it lets them kind of make that leap. And I hate paper.
That's fair. No, paper is.
We did paper at Springside Chestnut Hill, and it was really rough. But
Yeah. I mean, they all come with their
yeah,
own challenges.
yeah. I took a lot of notes in the earlier sessions, so that was all good stuff.
But you kind of use it.
Yeah, cool.
I really like the panel format and being able to hear from different people.
So I think this is still recording. How do I hit? Do you know how I hit stop recording? Do I hit a button or something?
Okay.
Hmm.